Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Lawn to No Dig Garden series. In this episode, I'll be sowing seeds into the raised beds I built in the garden transformation video, and I'll also be building some mini polytunnels to help those seeds germinate and keep the beds protected. Let's get straight into it. Alright, so the plan today is going to be to plant out these 3 beds. The one behind me is going to have garlic in it, so I'm going to wait until the shortest day to plant that. I've had a bit of a problem with every cat in the neighbourhood using these as a litter box since they've been in the last week. So I was trying to think how I could cover them up, and I thought the best solution was to probably add some mini polytunnels across them, and hopefully that deters the cats, but it also might help with some seed germination given that it's now the end of April. So I'm a few weeks late, or later than I wanted to be, getting these seeds in. So I've just picked up some polythene, some irrigation piping to use as the framing, and then 32 saddle clamps just to hold them on the inside of the frame. So I'll put those prices on screen. Alright, so I'll start by raking all these level again, get rid of any cat shit that's in there, and I think the first thing that I'm going to do is add the brackets for the pipe to go in to make the frame. Once that's in, I'll then go ahead and plant the seeds that we have, and then after that I'll add the polythene on top. Alright, so I'm planning on adding that pipe at 1.5 meter lengths, or cutting it at 1.5 meter lengths I should say. So what I've done is I've just set up a little jig here. So I'm just using 2 of those saddle clamps, one at each end with a stop block at the end at 1500 mil. So I'll just feed the pipe in from this end until it hits the stop block at that end, and then I know it's at 1500, I can just cut it off there. Hi buddy.
I get it.
Yeah, that pipe's going to flick, so look at, keep going. Nice. Pushing. Job. 3, 2, 1, go. Good job.
Okay.
What are you saying? Alright, here's how things are looking with the saddle clamps on and the frames all set up. Next I'll sow the seeds that we're planting today, but before that I'm giving the beds a good soak to get the soil ready. Here I'm marking out where I want the rows. These beds are roughly 2 meters wide by 1 meter deep. I'm leaving a gap between the 2 middle rows so I can step in if I need to for weeding or whatever. I'm spacing the rows 30 centimeters apart, starting 15 centimeters in from the end of each bed. I'm planting carrots in this bed, so I'm using this board to create trenches along the length of the bed, spacing them out every 30 centimeters for the seeds. I picked up all of these seeds from King Seeds here in New Zealand at $5 a packet. This carrot variety is called Kuroda. Each pack has around 2,000 seeds, and I only used about half of it for this bed. I really struggled to get the seeds in evenly along the row, so if you've got a better method than tapping the packet, let me know in the comments. I then used this board to cover the rows with a thin layer of soil and gave it a light pat down to settle everything in. From what I've seen, it's really important to keep carrot seeds moist once they're in the ground to get good germination. Some people lay a board over the rows or use ground cover to hold in moisture until the seedlings start to come through. But since these are going to be under a mini polytunnel, I'm just planning to check them daily and make sure the soil stays moist, watering when it's needed. Alright, for the shallots and beetroot, I'm keeping the rows 30 centimeters apart with 15 centimeter spacings along each row. What I tried to do here was add nails every 15 centimeters along this board to help mark out even spacing. It worked alright, but the holes from the nails were a bit small and hard to see, so next time I'd probably use something a bit wider. These shallots are the Zabroon variety, a cross between an onion and a shallot. I plan to multi-sow both the shallots and the beetroot. There are about 150 seeds in this pack, so I'm aiming for roughly 4 seeds per hole. The seeds were tiny and my fat fingers definitely made it a bit tricky to get them in. To be honest, I've got no idea how well any of these crops will grow. We're getting towards the end of autumn here in New Zealand, but I'm excited to give it a go anyway, as it's all part of the experience. Same as with the carrots, I used the board here to cover the seeds with a thin layer of soil, then gave the rows a good watering to settle everything in. I followed the same process here when spacing the rows for the beetroot. This pack had about 180 seeds, so I ended up sowing 5 or 6 seeds in each hole. I wasn't sure how well they'd germinate, so I figured it was safer to oversow and then thin them out later if needed. The beetroot I planted is a colour blend mix, which includes Bull's Blood, Golden Detroit, and Chioggia. Since it's my first time growing beetroot, I thought it would be a good idea to try a few different varieties and see which ones we like best. I've got a 2 by 10 meter sheet of polythene and 4 beds to cover, so I cut it into 2.5 meter sections to fit each one. I started by draping the polythene over the frame and trying to get it roughly centered. Then I added these pieces of wood along the back edge, laying them over the polythene and nailing them into the bed edging. This way the plastic is held down by the full length of the board, not just in a few small spots. To make it easy to roll up the front of a tunnel when I need to water the bed, I just stapled the polythene to this piece of wood. I had this old garden hose laying around. It's got a few splits in it and I didn't really have a use for it, so I thought I'd try cutting it into small sections to help hold the polythene onto the frames. You can see one of them fell off straight after I put it on. I think that's down to the frames being 19mm pipe and the hose I used is closer to 13mm. If the frame was also 13mm, I reckon the hose would have worked a whole lot better. I went ahead and repeated the same steps for the next 2 polytunnels, and this is how everything was looking by the end of the day. Alright, so that last clip that you saw was on Friday afternoon. On Friday night we had a little bit of wind, nothing crazy, but on Saturday morning I noticed about 90% of those sections of pipe had come off. So what I did on Saturday was cut the last meter of irrigation pipe I had into 35mm sections and put those on. So I've just done 3 per side and those seem to be holding the plastic on much better. So what I'm going to do is add those to the rest of the polytunnels. The other thing that I noticed was that on Saturday when I did this one, I pulled the plastic tight, but you can see that end frame is sort of bent in there. So what I'm going to do for all 4 of these is add a piece of wood along the top there and screw it into the top of that irrigation pipe, just to hold everything at the same length and hopefully stop it from doing what it's doing here. When I was taking these off, I noticed a bit of cat scratching in one of the tunnels, so I mixed up some white vinegar, lemon and cayenne pepper in the hopes it'll keep them away. If you know any good home remedies to deter cats from the garden, please let me know in the comments. I just used my table saw to cut some thin strips of wood for this part. If you don't have any wood or a table saw, I'm sure another length of pipe along the top would work just as well. I made sure all the framing was straight and square and then attached the strip of wood to the frame using some short wood screws. And then went ahead and repeated that process for the rest of the polytunnels. Here's how it looks. I rounded off the end of the wooden strip with some sandpaper just to make sure nothing would poke through the polythene. These are the clips I made using the leftover irrigation pipe. I just cut it into 35mm sections, sliced down the side and rounded off the edges. With the wooden strips in place and the clips ready to go, all that was left to do was roll down the polythene and clip it into place. With that all done, this is how they were looking. It's such a good feeling seeing a project come together, especially when all it takes is some simple materials and a bit of time. Now the beds are covered and ready to go, and I can't wait to see how everything grows. Alright, welcome back. It's been exactly 1 week, and I just wanted to give you a quick look at how the tunnels are holding up and how the seeds are getting on. I'm not sure how well you can see this on camera, so you'll just have to take my word for it. But it looks like all the rows of carrots have started to germinate, so the moisture levels must be about right. If you saw my garden transformation video, you might have seen there were some roots mixed into the compost. I thought they were leftovers from the spring crops, but a few of them must have come from the raspberries that were growing a few meters away. A couple of those have started popping up too, but I'm actually glad since I'm after more raspberry plants. So I dug them out, potted them up, and they'll join the berry patch once I get around to setting it up. I could only see one cell of shallots starting to germinate so far, but I'll take that as a promising sign. I think they usually take somewhere between 1 and 2 weeks to come through anyway. Besides the seeds are planted in the odd raspberry, I've also had a bit of weed seed germinating. I think it's come from the soil underneath my first no-dig garden rather than the compost itself. I must have dug a bit of it up when I moved the compost over from my old garden. Last but not least, you can see plenty of the beetroot seedlings have germinated, which is great to see. They're just starting to come through now, and it looks like most of the cells have something popping up. I also wanted to mention that I ended up screwing the timber, the one that the polythene's wrapped around, to the front of the bed. It had unraveled a few times in strong wind, so this should keep it a bit more secure. That's the end of this one, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you're keen to follow along and see how these crops do under these tunnels, feel free to subscribe and stick around for the next one.